Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Unscheduled cries, when Jimin lets go and Jungkook cries without words. In a city that never really sleeps, Seoul, behind military wire fences and the shadow of the global spotlight, something happened that was uncaptured, but shook the world. A silent room, a stifled confession, and two names we thought were indestructible, Jimin and Jungkook. They weren't on stage, not wearing shiny stage suits or singing verses we knew by heart. They were just two people sitting across from each other amidst comrades and HYBE management staff in a closed-door meeting. The purpose was simple: to evaluate, to discuss, to talk about the future. But time apparently had other plans. That night wasn't about strategy. It was about letting go of what had been unspoken. Someone who was in the room said that a sudden silence fell over the session. Not because of protocol, not because of seniority, but because Jimin took a breath, like someone about to dive into the nameless depths. And then, in a voice that was no longer strong but full of guts, he spoke. "I've been hiding a lot from you," he told Jungkook, his voice shattering like slowly falling glass. "I always wanted to seem strong in your eyes. But honestly, I'm tired. I'm scared. I'm afraid you'll walk away if you find out who I really am." And there, Jungkook, the golden magne who always appeared unshakable, began to lose his usual toughness. He looked down. His shoulders shook. And without warning, the tears flowed, not out of weakness, but because of the weight of the burden he was carrying around someone he had been protecting in silence. Jimin, in the silence of a room that felt like a silent church, continued. He spoke of dark days, when fame felt like a wall that was getting higher, not a protection. About the moments when he felt unworthy to stand on the grand stage, especially next to someone as bright as Jungkook. But what was surprising wasn't just his honesty. It was the way he said it, not to blame, not to pity, but to thank. Because even when Jimin felt most hidden, Jungkook was always there, even without knowing the storm that was roaring behind his best friend's smile. The tears did not explode, but they flowed slowly, like afternoon rain that suddenly became silent. They hugged. For a long time. Without words. And when that happened, it was as if the outside world stopped turning. The meeting did not continue. No one was able to open the next agenda page. Because everyone present knew, they had just witnessed a confession that broke the wall of time. This news, initially only spread in narrow circles of the industry, finally spread to the wider world. But unlike previous rumors, this news was not just gossip or wild interpretations. This was a rare portrait of humanity in the glittering world of K-pop. ARMY reacted in a way that only connected hearts can. Hashtags like #JikookTruth and #Jungkook Cry for Jimin floated in the digital air. But behind the hashtags there were tears. There were stories. There were people who suddenly felt less alone. We always knew they loved each other. But we didn't know that love also hid such deep fear, one fan wrote. Today, BTS are not just idols. They are humans who taught us to be honest. And like an echo that never fades, the incident has given rise to reflections among idols and fans alike. About invisible pressures. About wounds covered by smiles. About how sometimes even the people closest to us can feel alone, because we forget to ask, "Are you okay?" Shortly after the incident, RM wrote a sentence that has quietly become a quote for anyone holding back words. Sometimes delayed words can be a bridge to healing. Don't be afraid to speak. Behind that courage, there's always a hug waiting. And somehow the universe seems to have changed. Jungkook, in limited military videos, now often stands close to Jimin. Not prominently, not theatrically, but close enough to touch his back as Jimin walks through the crowd. A sign that he's there. That he's always there. Meanwhile, Jimin seems to have changed. He's lighter. He smiles more often without needing to hide. He greets more people. And for those who have known him for a long time, they know, this is a version of Jimin who has forgiven himself. To the world, this may be just a moment behind the walls of a military barracks. But for those who know the meaning of pain, this is a new chapter, where honesty is no longer considered weakness, and love is no longer covered in silence. And maybe, that's why BTS remains irreplaceable. Not just because of the songs or the choreography, but because they taught us to live more honestly, to love more deeply, to dare to cry. even when the cameras aren't rolling. And this story won't be written in a list of awards or golden trophies, but it will live in our hearts as an embrace undocumented, but never forgotten. The night had passed, but the thud of his emotions still pounded softly on the walls of his soul. Days changed and military duty demanded discipline again. But something had changed, unseen but felt like the dew in the early morning, silent but refreshing. In the dull-painted barracks, amidst neatly stacked boots and the metallic smell of guns lingering in the air, Jungkook and Jimin began to rewrite their silence. Not with words but with small gestures that only they understood. One morning, when the soldiers woke up under the cold blaring alarm, Jimin turned and found Jungkook sitting on the edge of the bed, staring out the window. The sky was not yet completely blue. But in Jungkook's face, Jimin found something brighter than the sun, a calmness that grew from understanding. From that day on, the two were often found approaching each other in the simplest ways. Sitting side by side in the cafeteria at breakfast. Exchanging water bottles during training. Smiling for no reason when their gazes met for a moment. There were no more walls. There was no more "I have to be strong," only presence, sincere and whole. And in the midst of the tiring training, reportedly there was one day where the soldiers were asked to write letters to the people they missed. The letter would not be sent. Just a form of emotional training. But the letter became a silent witness to feelings that had never been written down so far. Jimin wrote one page. He folded it carefully. But before he put it in the assignment box, he walked slowly towards Jungkook, who was twisting his shoelaces with a wrinkled face because of the blisters that had not yet healed. Without many words, Jimin placed the letter on Jungkook's knee. Jungkook looked at it for a long time, then nodded without a smile but full of feeling. That afternoon, the letter was opened. "Unders to you who I always saw from below the stage. But now sit beside me, equal and after returning as a human. Thank you for crying when I talk. Because you don't pretend to be tough, even though you can. Maybe the world loves you because of your light. But I love you because you stay. Even when I don't shine, under." Jimin Those words didn't go viral. They weren't uploaded. They weren't read at big concerts. But the letter stayed in Jungkook's chest pocket for a few weeks, folded and worn, like a prayer that was constantly held. And if we ask anyone who saw them in the days that followed, they might say, they're the same as always. But not for the sensitive ones. Because love, when healed, radiates a new aura that can't be faked. The wounds received turn into light. Jungkook began to open up more sides of himself. In military training sessions, he no longer just strengthened the weak, but began to learn to ask for help. While Jimin could finally laugh without feeling like he had to hold back tears. In the quiet nights, under thin blankets and the dim lights of the barracks, two voices that once sang only in stadiums now whisper about life, about the future, about the home they built not with walls, but with understanding. And out there, the world keeps turning. BTS remains a big name. But for those who understand, true love doesn't always shine in front of the camera. It grows in small spaces. In the space between a confession and a hug. In the space between two men who were once afraid, but chose to be honest, even if it made them cry. And maybe that's where eternity begins. And in the end, the strongest love is not the one that is most often flaunted, but the one that lives in silence, despite time, distance, and circumstance. Jimin and Jungkook are not just two names in the history books of K-pop. They are two souls who have weathered waves of silence, traversed battlefields of emotions, and returned with wounds not hidden but shared. In a world that demands perfection and strength, they chose to be honest about their tiredness, fear, and longing. And in that honesty they found home. Not in a building, not on a stage, but in each other. For ARMY, this story is not just about tears or hugs. It is a reminder that, even behind the brightest spotlights, there are people who just want to be understood. And if love can survive in silence, then their story will live on, in songs yet to be written, on stages they will walk on again, and in the hearts of millions who believe. That honesty is the bravest form of love. That home never really leaves. And that BTS always comes back.